Marcus Chen had always believed that hard work and integrity would eventually pay off. At 32, he was the kind of software architect who arrived early, stayed late, and treated every project like it was his own company. But on that Tuesday morning in September, as he watched his colleague Derek Matthews present HIS revolutionary cloud migration strategy to the board of directors, Marcus realized that sometimes the world doesn't reward the righteous. It rewards the ruthless. The conference room fell silent as Derek clicked through slides that Marcus had spent 3 months perfecting. Every algorithm, every cost projection, every security protocol, stolen and repackaged with Derek's name in the corner. The worst part wasn't the theft itself. It was the way Derek had looked him in the eye the day before and asked, "Got anything exciting for the board meeting tomorrow?" Knowing full well what he was about to do. There's a moment in every person's life when they discover who they really are. Not the person they think they are, or the person they pretend to be, but the person they become when pushed beyond their breaking point. For some, this revelation comes through tragedy, for others through triumph. But for Marcus, it came through betrayal, and what followed would teach him that sometimes the meek don't inherit the earth, sometimes they have to take it. The ancient Chinese strategist Sun Tzu wrote that the supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. Marcus was about to learn that lesson firsthand, because while Derek Matthews thought he had won by stealing one presentation, he had actually declared war on someone who understood that true victory isn't about getting even. It's about getting ahead, and Marcus was just getting started. The applause in the boardroom felt like nails on a chalkboard. Marcus sat frozen in his chair, watching Derek Matthews bask in the praise that should have been his. CEO Jennifer Walsh was practically beaming as she shook Derek's hand, congratulating him on what she called the most innovative cost-saving strategy we've seen in years. "This could save us over $2 million annually," Walsh announced to the room. "Derek, I want you to lead the implementation team immediately. This is exactly the kind of forward thinking that earns promotions around here." Marcus felt his jaw clench involuntarily. $2 million annually. Those were his calculations, his projections, his months of late nights analyzing server loads and optimization patterns. Derek hadn't even understood the technical specifications when Marcus had explained them during their collaborative brainstorming session just 2 weeks ago. The most infuriating part was Derek's performance. He answered every technical question with the confidence of someone who had actually done the work. When board member Robert Harrison asked about potential security vulnerabilities, Derek smoothly referenced the mitigation strategies that Marcus had developed, complete with specific protocols and backup procedures. The man was a master manipulator, Marcus realized. He hadn't just stolen the work, he had studied it so thoroughly that he could present it as if it were his own brainchild. As the meeting concluded and people began filing out, Derek approached Marcus with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Great meeting, wasn't it? I think we're really going to make some positive changes around here." The casual use of "we" made Marcus's stomach turn. Derek was already claiming ownership not just of the strategy, but of its future success. Marcus managed a tight smile. "Congratulations on your promotion opportunity." He had learned long ago that sometimes the most dangerous response is no response at all. Let people think you're weak. Let them underestimate you and they'll reveal more than they ever intended. Derek's satisfied smirk told Marcus everything he needed to know about what kind of person he was dealing with. That evening, Marcus sat in his apartment staring at his laptop screen. The original files were still there, time-stamped with dates going back 3 months. Every email exchange, every iteration of the strategy, every late-night revision, all documented with his name on it. Derek had been clever, but he hadn't been thorough. He had stolen the final presentation, but he had left behind a digital trail that told the real story. The next morning brought what Marcus would later recognize as the first gift from the universe. Derek, riding high on his stolen success, made his first major mistake. He sent out a company-wide email announcing the formation of the Cloud Migration Task Force with himself as the lead architect. The email was riddled with technical inaccuracies, small ones that most people wouldn't notice, but glaring errors to anyone who actually understood the underlying systems. Marcus screenshot every mistake. Derek had confused load balancing protocols, misnamed several security frameworks, and most tellingly, had described the database optimization process in a way that revealed he didn't actually understand how it worked. It was like watching someone try to explain rocket science using words they had memorized, but concepts they had never grasped. But Marcus didn't point out these errors. Instead, he began documenting everything. He created a secure folder on his personal drive and started building what he privately called the case. Every email Derek sent with technical mistakes, every meeting where Derek stumbled over questions about implementation details, every moment where the mask slipped and revealed that Derek was essentially a very convincing actor playing a role he didn't understand. The opportunity to gather more evidence came sooner than expected. Jennifer Walsh called Marcus into her office that afternoon, asking him to serve as Derek's technical advisor on the project implementation. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was being asked to help implement his own stolen strategy, working under the supervision of the person who had robbed him. "I know you've been working on cloud infrastructure lately," Walsh said, completely unaware of the truth. "Derek mentioned you might have some insights that could help the team succeed." Marcus accepted the role graciously, recognizing it for what it was: the perfect inside position to watch Derek inevitably expose himself. Because the truth about people like Derek is that they're only as good as their last theft. Eventually, they run out of other people's work to steal, and that's when their real limitations become visible to everyone. As he left Walsh's office, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood: the thrill of playing a game where he knew something the other players didn't. Derek thought he had won by stealing the strategy. He had no idea that he had actually handed Marcus the keys to his own destruction. The first team meeting was a masterclass in incompetence disguised as leadership. Derek had assembled 8 people around the conference table, including Marcus, and immediately began assigning tasks based on what he called his comprehensive implementation roadmap. The problem was that his roadmap was essentially a summarized version of Marcus's original strategy document, stripped of all the crucial technical details that made it actually workable. "Marcus," Derek said, turning to him with that same hollow smile, "I'd like you to handle the database migration protocols. You seem to have a good grasp of the technical requirements." The audacity was breathtaking. Derek was literally asking Marcus to do the work that Derek was claiming credit for having already done. But Marcus simply nodded and took notes, watching as Derek assigned other team members to tasks they weren't qualified for, based on his superficial understanding of the project requirements. Within 30 minutes, it became clear that Derek had no actual implementation plan. He was making it up as he went along, hoping that his team would fill in the gaps. When junior developer Sarah Kim asked about the timeline for server provisioning, Derek gave a vague answer about optimizing our deployment schedule. When systems analyst Robert Torres questioned the budget allocations for security upgrades, Derek promised to circle back with more detailed numbers. Marcus began taking meticulous notes, but not about project tasks. He was documenting every moment when Derek revealed his ignorance, every question he deflected, every promise he made that he clearly couldn't keep. The pattern was becoming obvious. Derek was a smooth talker who could present other people's ideas convincingly, but he had no ability to execute on the complex technical work required to make those ideas reality. After the meeting, Marcus lingered as other team members filtered out. He watched Derek fumble with his laptop, clearly struggling with basic project management software. When Derek noticed him watching, he laughed it off. "Still getting used to this new system," he said. "You know how it is with these corporate tools." Marcus knew exactly how it was. Derek was using the same project management platform the company had been using for 2 years. Any senior technical staff member should have been completely familiar with it. It was another small crack in the facade, another piece of evidence for the case. That night, Marcus created a detailed timeline of the meeting, complete with specific quotes and timestamps. He was building more than just evidence of Derek's incompetence. He was documenting a pattern of behavior that would eventually become undeniable. Because the truth about frauds like Derek is that they always reveal themselves, given enough rope. Marcus was just making sure there was a clear record when the inevitable happened. 3 weeks into the project, Derek made his second critical mistake. Facing mounting pressure from Jennifer Walsh for concrete progress updates, he called an emergency team meeting and announced that they were moving to an accelerated implementation timeline. The new schedule was not just ambitious, it was technically impossible given the infrastructure requirements. "I've been analyzing our current systems," Derek announced to the team, "and I believe we can compress our migration timeline from 6 months to 3 months without compromising quality or security." Marcus watched the faces around the table. Sarah Kim looked confused. Robert Torres was clearly calculating the impossibility of the timeline in his head. Even the non-technical team members seemed to sense that something was wrong. But Derek pressed forward, assigning impossible deadlines with the confidence of someone who had never actually had to execute on complex technical work. "Marcus," Derek said, turning to him with that familiar hollow smile, "you'll handle the database optimization and migration. I need it completed in 4 weeks instead of the originally planned 8 weeks. This was the moment Marcus had been waiting for. Instead of objecting or pointing out the timeline's impossibility, he simply nodded and said, "I'll see what I can do." Because he understood something Derek didn't. When someone gives you enough rope, sometimes the smartest thing to do is let them hang themselves with it. After the meeting, Marcus approached Sarah Kim privately. "How are you feeling about the new timeline?" he asked casually. Sarah shook her head. "It's completely unrealistic. The security testing alone requires at least 6 weeks, and that's assuming everything works perfectly on the first try. Derek seems to think we can just skip steps, but that's not how enterprise systems work." Marcus listened and took mental notes. He wasn't gathering ammunition to use against Derek. He was gathering proof of what Derek was doing to the entire team. Because the truth was that Derek's incompetence wasn't just hurting Marcus anymore. It was putting the entire project at risk, along with the careers and reputations of everyone involved. That evening, Marcus created a detailed technical analysis of Derek's proposed timeline. Using actual data from similar migrations he had researched, he calculated that Derek's accelerated schedule would require cutting critical testing phases, skipping security protocols, and essentially gambling with the company's most important data systems. The analysis was thorough, professional, and damning, but Marcus didn't send it to anyone. Not yet. He simply added it to the case and waited. The breaking point came during the 4th week of Derek's accelerated timeline. Sarah Kim had been working 18-hour days trying to meet impossible deadlines, and she finally cracked during a team status meeting. Her voice was shaky with exhaustion as she addressed Derek directly. "I can't complete the security testing in the time frame you've given me. It's not physically possible. We're talking about protocols that protect millions of dollars in client data. If we rush this and something goes wrong, people could lose their jobs. I could lose my job." Derek's response was telling. Instead of adjusting the timeline or acknowledging the legitimate concerns, he became defensive and accusatory. "Sarah, I understand you're feeling pressure, but this is what leadership looks like. Sometimes we have to push beyond our comfort zones to achieve exceptional results. I've done similar projects before, and I know it's possible. Marcus watched the room's dynamic shift in real time. Robert Torres was openly scowling. Even the junior team members looked uncomfortable. Derek had just claimed experience with projects he had never actually managed, while dismissing legitimate safety concerns from one of the company's most reliable developers. "Derek," Marcus interjected quietly, "maybe we should discuss the technical requirements in more detail. I think Sarah is raising some valid points about the security testing protocols." Derek's eyes flashed with irritation. "Marcus, I appreciate your concern, but I need team members who can execute on the vision, not find excuses for why it can't be done. We're not going to achieve breakthrough results with a small thinking mentality." It was a perfect moment, crystallized in uncomfortable silence. Derek had just insulted two of his most competent team members in front of the entire group, while revealing his complete ignorance of actual project requirements. Marcus made sure to document every word. After the meeting, 3 different team members approached Marcus privately to express their concerns about Derek's leadership. Marcus listened sympathetically but didn't encourage their complaints. He was building something bigger than office gossip. He was waiting for Derek to create a crisis so obvious that even senior management couldn't ignore it. That crisis was coming sooner than anyone expected. The disaster struck on a Friday morning in October. Derek, desperate to show progress to Jennifer Walsh, had pressured the team into implementing the first phase of the migration without completing proper testing protocols. Sarah Kim had documented her objections in writing, but Derek had overruled her concerns, claiming that perfectionism was the enemy of progress. The system failure was spectacular. 3 major client databases went offline simultaneously, triggering automatic alerts to the CEO, CTO, and every department head in the company. Phone lines lit up with panicked clients unable to access their data. The company's reputation, built over 15 years, was suddenly hanging by a thread. Marcus arrived at the office to find Derek in full crisis mode, frantically making phone calls and assigning blame to everyone except himself. The sight was almost pathetic. A man who had built his career on stolen work, suddenly faced with the consequences of his own decisions. "This is a systems issue, not a leadership issue," Derek was explaining to Jennifer Walsh over the phone. "My team didn't follow the protocols I established. I'm going to need to make some personnel changes to ensure this doesn't happen again." Marcus felt a cold fury rise in his chest. Derek was preparing to throw his team members under the bus to save his own career. Sarah Kim, who had worked herself to exhaustion trying to prevent exactly this scenario, was about to be scapegoated for Derek's incompetence. But Marcus had been preparing for this moment. The case he had been building contained everything: the original strategy documents proving Derek's theft, the timeline of technical errors revealing Derek's incompetence, and most importantly, Sarah's written objections to the rushed implementation schedule. Derek had left a trail of evidence that led directly back to his own failures. That afternoon, as Derek called an emergency team meeting to discuss accountability measures, Marcus made his decision. It was time to stop watching and start acting. Because sometimes the only way to stop a bad person from destroying good people is to make sure the truth comes to light, completely and irrefutably. The war was about to begin, and Derek Matthews had no idea what he was up against. Marcus spent the weekend preparing what he privately called the presentation. Unlike Derek's stolen strategy document, this presentation was backed by irrefutable evidence, timestamps, and documented communications. Every claim could be verified. Every accusation was supported by multiple sources. It wasn't revenge. It was simply the truth, organized and presented professionally. The presentation began with the original cloud migration strategy, complete with metadata showing Marcus's authorship and the 3-month development timeline. Side-by-side comparisons made Derek's theft obvious to anyone with basic technical knowledge. But Marcus didn't stop there. He documented the pattern of incompetence that had followed, the technical errors in Derek's emails, the impossible timelines, the ignored safety protocols, and finally, the catastrophic system failure that could have been prevented. Most importantly, Marcus included Sarah Kim's written objections to the rushed implementation schedule, along with Derek's dismissive responses. The documentation showed a clear pattern: competent team members raising legitimate concerns, and Derek overruling them based on his fundamental misunderstanding of the technical requirements. Monday morning brought another gift from the universe. Jennifer Walsh called an all-hands meeting to address the system failure and announced that the company would be conducting a comprehensive review of the cloud migration project. Derek would be presenting his analysis of what went wrong and his plan for preventing future problems. Marcus sat in the back of the conference room, watching Derek stumble through another presentation built on borrowed knowledge and deflected responsibility. Derek blamed the system failure on inadequate testing procedures and team members who failed to follow established protocols. He announced that he would be restructuring the team to ensure better results going forward. The presentation was professionally delivered but fundamentally dishonest. Derek was positioning himself as the solution to problems he had created, while preparing to sacrifice team members who had tried to prevent the disaster. As Derek opened the floor for questions, Marcus raised his hand. "I have some additional information that might be relevant to the review process," he said calmly. "Would it be appropriate to share it now, or should I schedule a separate meeting with leadership?" Jennifer Walsh looked intrigued. "If it's relevant to understanding what happened, please share it now." Marcus stood up, holding a USB drive containing the presentation. "I think there might be some important context missing from the analysis we just heard." The silence in the conference room was deafening as Marcus connected his laptop to the projection system. Derek's face had gone pale, but he maintained his composure, probably assuming this was just another team member offering technical clarification. 3 months ago, Marcus began, clicking to his first slide. "I developed a comprehensive cloud migration strategy for our company." The screen showed the original document, complete with timestamps and metadata. This strategy included detailed cost projections, security protocols, and implementation timelines based on extensive research and analysis. Murmurs rippled through the room as people began to recognize the strategy Derek had presented to the board. Marcus clicked to the next slide, showing Derek's presentation side by side with his original document. As you can see, these documents are essentially identical, with one key difference. Marcus highlighted the authorship information. "My original strategy was developed over 3 months of research and analysis. This version appeared 2 weeks later with different authorship attribution." Derek finally spoke up, his voice strained but still attempting confidence. "Marcus, I think there might be some confusion about the collaborative nature of strategy development. We worked together on this project." Marcus nodded calmly and clicked to the next slide, showing email timestamps and communication records. "You're right that we had several discussions about cloud infrastructure. Here's the complete communication record between us during the development period." The emails told a clear story: Derek asking basic questions about technical concepts, Marcus explaining fundamental principles, Derek requesting just a quick look at your draft for feedback purposes. There was no collaboration, only Marcus teaching Derek about systems Derek didn't understand. "The concerning part isn't just the authorship attribution," Marcus continued, advancing to his technical analysis slides. "It's what happened when someone without deep technical knowledge tried to implement a complex strategy they didn't fully understand." The next series of slides documented Derek's incompetence in excruciating detail. Technical errors in company communications, impossible timeline projections, the dismissal of legitimate safety concerns from qualified team members. And finally, the catastrophic system failure that resulted from rushing critical implementation phases. Jennifer Walsh was taking notes rapidly. The other executives were exchanging glances that Derek couldn't see from his position at the front of the room. The atmosphere had shifted from routine post-mortem to formal investigation. Marcus's final slides were the most damaging. He showed Sarah Kim's written objections to the accelerated timeline, complete with detailed technical explanations of why the security testing couldn't be compressed. Next to those concerns, he displayed Derek's dismissive responses, including the quote about small thinking mentality and the need for team members who could execute on the vision. Sarah Kim is one of our most experienced security specialists, Marcus explained to the room. Her objections weren't based on perfectionism or resistance to change. They were based on technical requirements that are non-negotiable when dealing with client data systems. The documentation showed that Derek had overruled safety protocols he didn't understand, ignored warnings from qualified specialists, and then attempted to blame those same specialists when his decisions led to system failures. Derek tried one more defensive maneuver. This presentation seems designed to deflect responsibility rather than solve problems. We need to focus on moving forward, not relitigating past decisions. Marcus had anticipated this response. You're absolutely right that we need to focus on solutions. That's why my final recommendation is that we return to the original implementation strategy, with proper testing phases and realistic timelines. The technical framework is sound. It just needs to be executed by people who understand the underlying systems. Jennifer Walsh closed her laptop and addressed the room directly. I think we have enough information for now. Derek, Marcus, I'll need both of you to remain available for follow-up discussions. Everyone else, thank you for your time. As people began filing out, Marcus caught Sarah Kim's eye. She looked relieved, but also amazed, as if she couldn't quite believe that someone had finally stood up to Derek's systematic incompetence. Robert Torres gave Marcus a subtle nod of approval. Derek approached Marcus as they gathered their materials. You have no idea what you've just done, he said quietly, his friendly facade completely gone. Marcus looked him in the eye and responded calmly. I presented factual information to help leadership make informed decisions. Isn't that what team members are supposed to do? The investigation that followed was swift and thorough. Jennifer Walsh brought in the company's legal team and an external consulting firm to review the cloud migration project from inception to failure. Marcus provided additional documentation when requested, but the evidence he had presented spoke for itself. Derek was suspended pending the investigation's completion. Within a week, the consulting firm's preliminary findings confirmed everything Marcus had documented: intellectual property theft, technical incompetence, and management decisions that had put client data at risk. But the real vindication came from an unexpected source. Other employees, emboldened by Marcus's presentation, began coming forward with their own stories of Derek's behavior. A pattern emerged of someone who had built his entire career on claiming credit for other people's work, while systematically undermining anyone who might expose his incompetence. Jennifer Walsh called Marcus into her office on a Thursday afternoon. I owe you an apology, she said directly. We should have recognized what was happening before it reached this point. Your original strategy was brilliant, and the way Derek stole credit for it was completely unacceptable. Marcus appreciated the acknowledgement, but he was more interested in moving forward. What matters now is implementing the strategy correctly and preventing future incidents like this. Walsh nodded. That's exactly what I wanted to discuss. We're terminating Derek's employment immediately. The cloud migration project will need new leadership, someone who actually understands the technical requirements and can rebuild team morale. She paused, studying Marcus's expression. I'd like to offer you the position of senior technical architect. With full responsibility for the cloud migration project, it comes with a significant salary increase and a team budget to hire additional specialists as needed. Marcus had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that it was happening, he felt surprisingly calm. I accept the position. My first recommendation is promoting Sarah Kim to lead security specialist. She was right about the testing requirements, and the team needs to know that technical expertise is valued here. Over the following weeks, Marcus rebuilt the cloud migration team with a focus on competence and collaboration, rather than politics and presentation skills. The project was completed successfully 6 months later, with 0 security incidents and costs that came in 15% under budget. The transformation of Marcus's professional life was remarkable, but the real change was internal. He had learned that sometimes the right response to injustice isn't anger or revenge. It's patience, preparation, and the strategic application of truth. Derek's downfall hadn't required any manipulation or unethical behavior. It had simply required documenting reality and presenting it at the right moment. 6 months after Derek's termination, Marcus received an unexpected message. It was from Derek, reaching out through LinkedIn with what appeared to be an attempt at reconciliation. "Marcus, I hope you're doing well in your new role. I've had time to reflect on what happened, and I realize I made some mistakes. I'd like to buy you lunch sometime and clear the air between us." Marcus stared at the message for a long time, considering his response. The old Marcus might have been tempted by the opportunity to gloat or demand an apology. But the new Marcus understood something different about power and justice. He typed back a simple response. "Derek, I appreciate you reaching out. I wish you well in your future endeavors. But I think it's best if we keep our professional paths separate going forward." It wasn't cruel, but it was final. Because Marcus had learned that some bridges, once burned, should stay burned. Not out of vindictiveness, but out of wisdom. People like Derek don't change. They just find new victims and new ways to justify their behavior. The real victory wasn't Derek's downfall. It was the fact that Marcus had discovered his own strength, built a team based on merit and mutual respect, and created something valuable for the company and his career. He had transformed from someone who let things happen to him into someone who made things happen. 3 months later, Jennifer Walsh announced that the company's cloud migration had become a model for other organizations in their industry. Marcus was invited to present their approach at the National Enterprise Technology Conference, standing on a stage in front of 500 industry professionals, sharing knowledge he had developed through his own expertise and hard work. The conference presentation was everything Derek's stolen moment had pretended to be. Marcus spoke with genuine authority about technical challenges and solutions, answering complex questions with the confidence that comes from actually understanding your subject matter. The audience response was enthusiastic, and 3 companies approached him afterward with consulting opportunities. But the most satisfying moment came during the Q&A session, when a young developer from the audience asked about dealing with workplace politics and credit theft. Marcus paused, thinking about his response carefully. "The most important thing to understand," he said, "is that competence is ultimately self-evident. People who steal ideas can present them convincingly, but they can't execute on them effectively. Your best protection is to become so good at what you do that the difference between you and the imposters becomes obvious to everyone." After the conference, Marcus returned to work with a new perspective on his career and his role in the company. He had learned that justice doesn't always come quickly, but it does come to those who prepare for it and recognize the right moments to act. The cloud migration project had become a showcase for the entire company. Client satisfaction scores reached all-time highs, system reliability improved dramatically, and costs were significantly lower than projected. Marcus's team had become the model for how technical projects should be managed, with expertise, transparency, and respect for everyone's contributions. Sarah Kim, now the lead security specialist, had become one of the company's most valuable employees. Her meticulous approach to testing and security had prevented several potential incidents that could have been catastrophic. Robert Torres had been promoted to senior systems analyst and was leading the development of new optimization protocols. The team that Derek had nearly destroyed through incompetence and blame shifting had become stronger and more innovative than ever. They worked together with a shared understanding that their success was built on mutual respect and recognition of each person's expertise. A year after Derek's termination, Marcus received another unexpected piece of information. Through industry connections, he learned that Derek had been hired by a competing firm where he was already implementing his familiar pattern of claiming credit for other people's work. Marcus's first instinct was to warn Derek's new colleagues, but he quickly realized this wasn't his responsibility. Every professional needs to learn their own lessons about recognizing and dealing with incompetent colleagues. Marcus's job was to focus on building something positive, not crusading against people like Derek. Instead, Marcus concentrated on developing his team's reputation within the industry. He encouraged team members to present at conferences, publish technical articles, and build their own professional networks. The approach was working. Several team members had received job offers from prestigious companies, but chose to stay because of the collaborative environment Marcus had created. The company's leadership took notice of these retention rates. In an industry where talented developers typically change jobs every 2 years, Marcus's team had zero voluntary turnover. Jennifer Walsh mentioned this achievement during the annual shareholders meeting, crediting Marcus's leadership style for creating an environment where technical professionals wanted to build their careers. Marcus also began mentoring other employees who were dealing with difficult colleagues or workplace politics. He didn't offer advice about revenge or confrontation. Instead, he taught them what he had learned: the importance of documenting your work, building alliances with competent colleagues, and focusing on developing skills that speak for themselves. One of his mentees was a young designer named Patricia Santos, who was dealing with a manager who consistently took credit for her creative concepts. Marcus helped her develop a portfolio that clearly demonstrated her artistic evolution and technical growth over time. When Patricia was eventually promoted to art director, she had the evidence to support her achievements and the confidence to lead her own team effectively. The second anniversary of Derek's departure brought unexpected recognition for Marcus. The company nominated him for the Regional Technology Leadership Award, recognizing his role in developing innovative cloud infrastructure solutions. The nomination cited not just the technical achievements, but his approach to team building and knowledge sharing. Marcus accepted the nomination graciously, but he made sure the award ceremony included recognition for his entire team. During his acceptance speech, he specifically mentioned Sarah Kim's security expertise, Robert Torres' systems analysis, and the contributions of every team member who had made their success possible. Individual achievement is often an illusion, Marcus told the audience of technology professionals. Real innovation comes from teams where everyone's expertise is recognized and valued. The moment you start taking credit for other people's work, you stop learning and growing yourself. The speech was recorded and shared widely within the technology community. Several industry publications picked up the story, highlighting Marcus's team-based approach to technical leadership. The attention brought new business opportunities to the company and helped establish Marcus as a thought leader in enterprise technology. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from a different source. Patricia Santos, the designer Marcus had mentored, sent him a message after receiving her own promotion. "Thank you for teaching me that the best response to workplace injustice isn't anger, it's excellence. You showed me that competent people don't need to tear others down to build themselves up." Marcus realized that this was becoming his true legacy. Not just the technical innovations or the business success, but the example of how to respond to professional challenges with integrity and strategic thinking. He was building something more valuable than a successful career. He was demonstrating a better way to work and lead. The cloud migration project had evolved into a comprehensive technology modernization initiative, with Marcus leading a team of 15 specialists across multiple disciplines. They were no longer just implementing solutions. They were developing new approaches that other companies wanted to license and adopt. 3 years after the Derek Matthews incident, Marcus faced a new challenge that tested everything he had learned. The company acquired a smaller competitor, and the integration process revealed that the acquired company's CTO, Richard Sterling, had a management style remarkably similar to Derek's. Charismatic presentation skills combined with technical incompetence and a tendency to claim credit for subordinates' work. But this time, Marcus wasn't a frustrated individual contributor hoping someone would notice the truth. He was a senior leader with a proven track record and a team of loyal colleagues who trusted his judgment. When Sterling began making unrealistic promises about integration timelines and dismissing concerns from experienced developers, Marcus was in a position to respond strategically. Marcus didn't confront Sterling directly or try to expose him immediately. Instead, he began documenting Sterling's technical claims and management decisions with the same methodical approach he had used with Derek. He also quietly reached out to competent employees from the acquired company, offering them support and opportunities to demonstrate their expertise. The situation came to a head when Sterling promised the board that the integration could be completed in 3 months, despite technical assessments showing that 6 months would be optimistic. Marcus prepared a detailed analysis of the integration requirements, backed by input from specialists on both sides of the merger. When Jennifer Walsh asked for Marcus's assessment of Sterling's timeline, he presented his analysis professionally and objectively. The evidence showed that Sterling's promises were not just optimistic, they were technically impossible without cutting critical security and testing procedures. Based on my experience with similar projects, Marcus explained to the executive team, I believe we need to prioritize quality and security over speed. The cost of integration problems would far exceed the cost of taking additional time to do the work properly. Walsh trusted Marcus's judgment completely by this point. Sterling's promises were rejected, and Marcus was asked to lead the integration project with a realistic timeline and proper resource allocation. The integration project became another showcase for Marcus's approach to technical leadership. Instead of treating the acquired company's employees as outsiders to be managed, he integrated the most competent specialists into his team and gave them opportunities to contribute meaningfully to the project. Several of the acquired company's developers had been frustrated by Sterling's management style and were relieved to work in an environment where technical expertise was valued over political maneuvering. They brought valuable knowledge about legacy systems and client requirements that proved crucial to the integration's success. Sterling, meanwhile, found himself increasingly marginalized as it became obvious that his technical knowledge was superficial and his management approach was counterproductive. He resigned 6 months into the integration, citing cultural differences and strategic disagreements with the new company direction. Marcus felt no satisfaction in Sterling's departure. By this point, he understood that people like Derek and Sterling were symptoms of larger problems in how companies evaluated and promoted technical professionals. His real contribution wasn't exposing individual incompetent managers. It was demonstrating a better model of technical leadership. The integration was completed successfully, 2 weeks ahead of Marcus's projected timeline and significantly under budget. More importantly, employee satisfaction scores for the technical teams were the highest in the company's history. People wanted to work for Marcus because they knew their contributions would be recognized and their expertise would be valued. Jennifer Walsh promoted Marcus to Vice President of Technology Operations, with responsibility for all technical teams across the merged company. At 37, he had become one of the youngest VPs in the company's history, and his promotion was based on a clear track record of technical achievement and team building. During his promotion announcement, Walsh made a point of emphasizing Marcus's integrity and collaborative leadership style. Marcus has shown that technical excellence and ethical leadership aren't just compatible, they're synergistic. His teams consistently outperform expectations because people trust him and want to contribute to his vision. As VP of Technology Operations, Marcus faced new challenges and opportunities. He was now responsible for over 50 technical professionals, and his decisions affected the company's entire technology strategy. But he maintained the same principles that had guided him since the Derek Matthews incident. Hire competent people, recognize their contributions, and focus on building rather than tearing down. One of his first initiatives was implementing a transparent project attribution system that made it impossible for managers to claim credit for subordinates' work. Every technical contribution was documented and attributed to its actual author. Team members were encouraged to present their own work at conferences and industry events. The system wasn't designed to prevent another Derek Matthews situation. It was designed to create an environment where Derek Matthews types couldn't succeed in the first place. By making competence and contribution visible and measurable, Marcus had built a culture where technical merit was the primary basis for advancement. The results were remarkable. The company's technology teams became known throughout the industry for innovation and reliability. Turnover rates dropped to near zero, and the company began attracting top talent from competitors who wanted to work in an environment where their expertise would be recognized and rewarded. Marcus also established mentorship programs that paired senior developers with junior staff, creating pathways for career advancement based on skill development rather than political maneuvering. The programs became so successful that other companies began asking Marcus to consult on their own team development initiatives. 5 years after the Derek Matthews incident, Marcus was invited to deliver the keynote address at the International Technology Leadership Summit. His speech, titled "Building Excellence Through Ethical Leadership," became one of the most watched presentations in the conference's history. The greatest threat to innovation isn't technological complexity, Marcus told the audience of over 2,000 technology leaders. It's the human tendency to prioritize presentation over competence, politics over performance. When we create environments where technical merit is the primary basis for advancement, we unleash potential that politics-based systems can never access. The final chapter of Marcus's journey came full circle in an unexpected way. During a routine industry networking event, he encountered someone he hadn't seen in years, Derek Matthews. Derek approached him at the cocktail reception, looking older and somewhat worn down by whatever experiences had followed his termination. "Marcus," Derek said, extending his hand with a hesitant smile. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to talk to me." Marcus shook his hand cordially. "Derek, how have you been? Honestly, it's been a difficult few years. I've had time to think about what happened, and I owe you an apology. What I did was wrong, and I've learned some hard lessons about the kind of professional I want to be." Marcus studied Derek's expression, looking for signs of the old manipulation and finding something that seemed like genuine remorse. "I appreciate you saying that. It takes courage to acknowledge mistakes and try to grow from them." Derek nodded. "I heard about your promotion to VP. That's incredible. And from what I've heard, well, deserved. You've built something really special there. I've been fortunate to work with exceptional people." Marcus replied diplomatically. Success in technology is always a team effort. They talked for a few more minutes about industry trends and career developments. Derek mentioned that he had been working with smaller companies, focusing on implementation roles rather than leadership positions. He seemed to have genuinely learned something about his own limitations and was trying to build a more honest professional identity. As their conversation concluded, Derek extended his hand again. "I know I have no right to ask this, but I hope someday we can put the past behind us completely." Marcus considered the request carefully. "Derek, I wish you well in your career and your personal growth. I think the best thing for both of us is to continue building our separate professional paths, but I hold no animosity toward you." It was a gracious response that acknowledged Derek's attempt at reconciliation while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Marcus had learned that forgiveness doesn't require ongoing relationship, and that some chapters of life are best left closed even when they end on a positive note. Marcus Chen's story teaches us that the most powerful response to workplace injustice isn't immediate confrontation or emotional reaction. It's strategic patience combined with meticulous preparation. When someone steals your work, undermines your contributions, or threatens your career, your first instinct might be anger or revenge. But Marcus discovered something more effective: the systematic application of truth, delivered at precisely the right moment. The key lessons from Marcus's experience extend far beyond dealing with credit thieves and incompetent managers. They represent a blueprint for professional excellence that serves anyone who wants to build a career based on genuine achievement, rather than political maneuvering. Document your contributions, develop your expertise, build alliances with competent colleagues, and never compromise your integrity for short-term advantage. Perhaps most importantly, Marcus learned that true victory isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building something so valuable that your enemies become irrelevant. Derek Matthews' downfall was simply a byproduct of Marcus's commitment to excellence and ethical leadership. The real achievement was creating teams, systems, and opportunities that lifted everyone involved. The technology industry is full of Derek Matthews types. People who present well but lack substance, who claim credit for others' work, and who advance through manipulation rather than merit. But it's also full of Marcus Chen types, professionals who focus on developing genuine expertise, who recognize and develop talent in others, and who understand that sustainable success comes from building rather than tearing down. If you're facing your own Derek Matthews situation, remember that competence is ultimately self-evident, and justice, while sometimes delayed, tends to find its way to those who prepare for it properly. Your best protection against workplace predators isn't political maneuvering. It's becoming so good at what you do that the difference between you and the imposters becomes obvious to everyone who matters. The question isn't whether you'll encounter people who try to take credit for your work or undermine your career. The question is whether you'll respond with wisdom, patience, and strategic thinking, or with emotional reactions that give them more power over your professional future. Are you documenting your contributions and building the kind of evidence that speaks for itself? Are you developing expertise that can't be faked or stolen? Are you building relationships with colleagues who value competence over politics? Most importantly, are you focused on creating something positive and valuable? Or are you letting other people's behavior define your professional identity? Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to support more stories about professional excellence and workplace justice. And hey, if this story resonated with you and you want to support this work, help me out with a coffee on Ko-fi. Your contribution, no matter how small, makes all the difference in keeping stories like this one being told.